have a tendency to sugarcoat and make things look really good, but sometimes you can't do that all the time. It's because it's so sad. It is so sad for your child to die. And people have said, oh, my mother died. I'm like, I'm so sorry. My mother died too. My grandmother died. But there's no sadness like your child dying.
Every single individual has a story to tell, and they're great stories that need to be heard.
I want every listener to know they have the ability to change the world.
Welcome to the 1720 podcast.
What's up, Mountain Movers? Welcome back to the 1720 podcast. Today, we're honored to be joined by Annette Leslie, and she's part of the Carson Leslie Foundation, has an incredible story. Many of you might already have heard of her story and the foundation through the construction industry, but you're going to get to hear a lot more in the stories of impact and all the cool things today. So, Annette, thanks for joining us today.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you, fellas.
Yeah, so listeners know, but you don't. This is how we usually kick our podcast off, is what we call our elevator pitch, or just generally answering the question, who is Annette? A little chuckle. Right. That's how we start.
Well, I've been around the sun a few years, so I kind of have a little bit of a story, but I'm a native Texan, been married to a Cornhusker for almost 38 years. We have two sons, one who lives just around the corner from us, and he's given us a dear, precious, perfect grandson, Heights Carson Leslie. And our other son, as most everyone that might be listening knows, our other son, Carson, lives in heaven. So, but I grew up in Houston, the youngest of four kids, two brothers, one sister, and my childhood was happy and simple, filled with adventures in the neighborhood, old-timey, One memory I remember that we talk about, my siblings and I talk about all the time, I loved riding this dog. Like there was no leash laws back in the olden days. There was this Weimaraner that would walk around the neighborhood, and I would get on that Weimaraner and ride it around the neighborhood. And it was like, what was I thinking? I don't know, but it's kind of funny. It's a funny memory, and we talk about it and laugh about it all the time.
Well, I was thinking you said writing about a Weimaraner.
No.
And then it took me a second to realize you said riding on a Weimaraner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would get on this big, giant gray Weimaraner with that little bitty, tiny, pudgy tail.
Yeah.
That doesn't even hardly, count as a tail.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember I just rode that thing all over the neighborhood. So
it's that big?
Yeah. Well, I was a little bitty girl.
Yeah.
So.
I was just picturing this big, fluffy, monster German dog. And then I looked and I'm like, hey, that kind of looks like a greyhound.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a stockier, sportier dog.
Yeah.
Matt Fisher right now is like, yeah, it's kind of like a Vizsla except gray. Because he has two Vizslas.
That's funny. It says Vizsla versus
Weimaraner. Yeah.
Weimaraner.
Yes.
Weimaraner.
Also, this is part of just, I told you when we got started, it'll just go all over the place. It's just like instant ditches and funnies and back. But my wife, Ashley, is listening right now, reminding herself of a story where we rescued a Weimaraner once.
Really?
And it destroyed our downstairs. And then we rescued like it was lost in the neighborhood. And they were like, nah. And we just took it to the rescue. We're like, we didn't mean to do that. Sorry.
Well, that's probably why that Weimaraner was always roaming the neighborhood, and he needed a little bit of love from, a little girl to jump on his back and ride him around.
There you go. Way to bring us back.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how things like that stick in your brain, as a memory?
There's, nobody had their cell phone then. There wasn't anything like that. And so there's no pictures, but I will never forget that. My brothers and sister talk about it. So we laugh hard.
Yeah.
And another thing, vacations were so simple back in the day. And one summer, I remember we drove our yellow station wagon with the wood panels to the Grand Canyon. And I remember, here again, riding a donkey down into the canyon. And it was magic.
Yeah.
It's one of those, I was probably 7 years old. I'm like, this is really cool. And at 7 years old, I remember we went from the Grand Canyon and we didn't stop until we went to California. And I remember it was, I didn't ever know. I was a little girl and I didn't really know where we were going. I was just getting in the car and I knew where I was supposed to sit. It was in the backwards seat facing back.
Right.
Are y'all old enough to remember those?
Aware of it? Yeah, the car seat.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I was entertaining myself the entire time, all the way to California and back, trying to get those truckers to do their horn.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that entertained me to California. and
That was
back.
your tablet.
That was what my duty was
Yeah.
as a 7-year-old little girl. Isn't that funny?
Yes. Do you remember the backward seat?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a buddy when we lived in Wyoming for a little while. It's a long story. We had some friends who had that, and when we ride in the back, he would throw M&Ms out the cracked glass.
Oh,
You know, and I was remember thinking at the time, like, we're gonna all die. Like, we're going to jail. Like, we can't be throwing things out this window. And he would wait till the car got close, and then pitch a M&M out the back of that window, and you could see it like clink.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, what a terrible kid. It wasn't me. It was my buddy. Anyway.
In quotes, my
Wow.
buddy.
Yeah,
Mine was pretty innocent with the little getting those guys to honk their horns, and I loved it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it was like, check that one off.
And vacations were simple.
They were simple.
You didn't have to save for an entire year just to take one,
Right.
like it feels like today.
And to get on the plane. No, and then we ate sardines and crackers and those little Vienna sausages all the way there and back. I haven't had any since, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, you could do without that part.
yeah. I do miss the Great American Road Trip.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It was the way it was done. And so, and then junior high, I joined the Girl Scouts, got a little bit classier. And I became the first class Girl Scout and earning the top Girl Scout Cookie Award sales patch,
Boom.
And then moved on to high school. I was on the dance team and I loved it. And this, speaking of vacations, that was my very first airplane ride to Washington, D.C. To dance in the Cherry Blossom Parade. It was an opportunity of a lifetime. So, and then at 17, I went off to Southwest Texas State University to become a school teacher. That was my dream. And there I met many of my lifelong friends. And actually, that's where I met George Strait back in the olden days. He was getting a start at this little tiny bar in San Marcos. And I was known to go early and stay late and, danced all night long to Asleep at the Wheel, his band then.
Yes.
So, which is his band now. He still calls it. But yeah, those were great days. And I'll tell you another story about that as we get a little bit further down the road. But as Carson got sicker and we launched the foundation, I wrote George a letter and reminded him of that. And he sent an autographed pair of Wranglers, and an autographed hat for our auction.
That's
awesome.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. So, but then anyhow, after school, after college, I got a job at KRLD radio station. And it was way back when Tom Landry was coaching the Cowboys. Roger Staubach had just retired. Herschel Walker, Too Tall Jones, Drew Pearson, Randy White were all the stars, and Brad Sham was announcing the games.
Yeah.
Even back then. So, and then when our kids became school age, I started teaching first grade. I put my education to work at the Covenant School of Dallas, and I loved every single minute of those little first graders coming into my class. They're all getting married now, and but that was a gift to my heart. Just those days at Covenant.
Do you still stay in communication with some of them?
Oh yeah,
that's
yeah,
so cool.
I do. I saw on Facebook last night that a little boy in my class just dropped on his knees and married, and got engaged with this adorable little girl, young woman now at Covenant. And so a lot of they're getting married now. Like they met there, and it's such a unique school. With depth and just deep education, and they just a lot of them are getting married to one another. I love that. I love watching that. So, and the ties you had asked about the construction industry. My husband has worked for the Beck Group for almost 25 years, and they've been so good to him. They just love us like a family, and it's a I'll tell you more about it later, but it's a really amazing group of good-souled, good-hearted, hard-working, great work ethic people.
Yep.
Agreed.
And they host an annual bow shoot for us, and then DPR. They have a unique atmosphere at their company that they have just scooped us up and have really embraced our mission. And I've become friends with a lot of the men and the women and that have come and gone throughout the year. So we love DPR. And there's a lot of the subcontractors by default because
Sure.
of what we've built here, and that have just seeped into my heart and seeped into our story and are very much part of, they're friends. They're really, really good, solid friends that we travel with, and we know we spend quite a bit of time, together. So, yeah.
All right. So we've sort of dropped a few nuggets in here about Carson and the story, and I'm going to bring us all together to begin the process of telling that. And so when you walked in, you handed us a book. It's a book called "Carry Me" by Carson Leslie, and we flipped it over and read something that I'm going to read back to you here to start the story. On the back it says, "My name is Carson Leslie, and I've been battling brain and spine cancer for the past 3 years. I love sports, babies, and Mexican food. I've written a book to give a voice to the teenagers and children who have cancer but are unable to express how such an illness affects their personal, social, physical, and emotional life. I want others to understand how to be a better friend to someone he or she knows that has a life-threatening disease. Even though every day of my life is a battle, I've learned that God is always there to lift me up. I live every day as if it was the day of judgment." That's where we start.
That's pretty amazing what he wrote.
Yeah. So tell us about Carson.
So Carson had a bold and charming confidence, even as a little bitty boy. He always had a posse of friends in the neighborhood. He had a posse of buddies at school. And he had this indomitable spirit. And even with his little crooked teeth, before they all fell out and then the new ones grew in, he had this indomitable, disarming smile that would warm a room. I mean, he was just liked by, he was always an early riser. And so when he would spend the night with a friend, the dad would say, he got up and came out and we sat here and talked about deep things over coffee, even as a young boy. So he's always had a deep soul, a young, old soul.
Yeah.
And, the things that he loved were, baseball. Most of all, he loved baseball. And his Make-A-Wish his first request was to meet Derek Jeter. And that's another story I'll tell you in a minute.
Yeah.
He loved fishing. He loved Texas Hold'em. That was his last birthday party was Texas Hold'em.
There you go.
A friend of ours threw him a big party. We knew he wasn't long for this world and everybody came. It was incredible. He was fiercely competitive and he loved his brother Craig, his older brother Craig, more than anyone in this world. He loved Craig. They were peas and carrots. We live in a smallish house, and our room was here, and their room was here, and there's a little bitty short hallway with a bathroom in between.
Mm-hmm.
They had bunk beds, when they were old enough to be in bunk beds, and I remember listening to them going to bed, after we read, and then we prayed, and then it's time to go to bed, and they would sit in there, and I always remember Carson going, "Bub," that's what he called him. He goes, "Bub, what do you think about?" And they would just have this litany of things they would talk about. And they would just talk until the first one fell asleep. And I would kind of eavesdrop on that. But they really did. They were close. They were the closest brothers that any brothers I've ever seen. And it was a gift to be Carson's mom for 14 years. And, I said I was a school teacher, but when he was diagnosed, it's like we were talking earlier, it's like he took on this different role and he taught us things as we watched him carry himself through this awful battle. But it was something about, he just didn't have time for guile. He's just living life straight up.
Yeah.
With no pretense. And, he would always ask the hard questions and was not afraid to ask for help, or for favors. He just had no guile.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and when you look through his book, when you read his book, I gave y'all copies. This is his journal that he kept. That part of the education at Covenant is it's a classical education. There's a lot of writing and a lot of journaling, and as little boys before they got into school, I would have them journal. Like in the summer, they would color a picture of what we did that day, and I don't know why I did that, but I did.
School teacher mom.
I know, whatever. So it was a natural extension of what he knew to keep a journal during his battle with cancer. And so, and if you, as you read through his book, the theme throughout the whole thing is that his courage comes from God.
Yeah.
And not just about his cancer battle, because it's like he didn't have a choice in that. It's not like he was this courageous, but he just pressed on in knowing that courage comes from God, knowing that the strength comes from God.
Yeah.
And he did show us how to embrace every little moment of goodness in the midst of pain, and he would find it. So what he would do is, you go and get a blood draw, and they give you a little prize, and it was always something for the little kid. And so he would leave. When we were leaving, he would go back into the waiting room and find a little kid that needed a little something that day and give it away. Cause there was, he didn't need jacks or,
Right.
So he was a giver at heart, but he liked to, he wanted to embrace the moment to help another kid. He was always looking out for the next guy, so, but he did keep this journal as his fears, his dreams, and his loss of dreams. And as he juggled high school and cancer, he did negotiate with his English teacher if his journal could count as his passing grade for freshman English. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it ticked him off that she gave him a 98. He went up to her office and said, "Listen, I'm basically a published author by now, and how can you give me a 98?" And she told that story at his not at his funeral, but at his would have been graduation. That she had never had to defend a 98 in her life, but she had to with Carson. So that's kind of a funny story.
Yeah.
But his book is now in the Library of Congress.
Yeah.
We've sold, over, I don't even know, lost count, 70,000 copies.
Yeah.
And after the first printing, his literary agent came to me and said, it's kind of left. We don't know what happens to this kid. And so I have a little part in there called Carrying On. And so it's just telling the rest of the story about him and what happened. And from a few little excerpts from me, from Mom, of what it was like, of my viewpoints of what it was like.
When did he decide to make that promise with you to turn this into a book? Like somewhere in the journey, he's like, all right, this journaling is going to turn into Carry Me. What did that conversation look like?
It was June 9th of 2009. I remember. And they have every 3-month scan. Sometimes you graduate to every 6-month scans. He never really got there. And so it was every 3-month scans to make sure the tumors are at bay. There's nothing's growing back in there. Well, it did. And they were. And he knew he was old enough to know that it was the beginning of the end. And that's when I told you that Dr. Bowers saw him and told him that, this is not good. It's never good when medulloblastoma comes back. And you could tell because Dr. Bowers is a deep-souled Christian man, and you knew it broke his heart when he had to come in there and tell Carson. And so Carson said, "I want to see those tumors." And so he had to go and put them up there, and you could see them. They were 3 big tumors that just had already grown back, because disregarding of what, all the chemo he had been through and the radiation, they just grew back. So anyhow, that said, after we left the appointment, we got into the car, my car, and he shut the door. It was pretty quiet. And he goes, "Mama," he goes, "promise me one thing." And I thought, well, I immediately thought that maybe he wanted to go to Paris, or I'm like, we'll do anything. What's your promise? And he goes, "Promise me my book gets published." I'm like, "Your book?" He goes, "My journal." I'm like, "Done." And so we had from June 4th, and then he died January 12th, the next, January 2010, January 12th, 2010. So we had some time. He had some time. So as he got weaker and weaker, I did engage his English teacher to help him put his heart into words. onto paper. And so she would come over and ask him questions, and they would sit there and type. Or, he would go to her office. Sometimes he would go to school. Sometimes he would just show up there and call her and say, I want to come and write. And so she was amazing. She's the one that he negotiated with, he goes, 98, what the heck?
Yeah.
So, she was incredible, an incredible friend. And she helped make it happen, but it's all his words. And, he, after you have radiation to your entire brain every day for 6 weeks, it affects it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the side effects started manifesting more and more and more, even as more and more tumors came into his brain. So he needed some help from her. He couldn't really get it all written down.
Yeah.
But I do have his journal. I should have brought that that I didn't even know he started it, but he had the very first part is when he started it. And it's a little leather bound journal that we gave him, thinking, keep track of all this stuff. So, and he says, never in my wildest dream did I ever think I'd be writing a book. Playing shortstop for the New York Yankees was higher on my list, but here I am, an author, my first business deal, and I'm on top of the world. This could have never happened without the support and love of many people. I'm grateful for all the time, talent, and treasure people have donated for my benefit to help make this possible. A very special thank you to Pat Gorton, my English teacher, tutor, and friend, for helping me put my heart on paper. You are someone I really trust and love. Together we walked, wrote, and cried. Thank you for pressing me to find and communicate my feelings, particularly those that were hidden deep inside of me. Without you, this would have never been completed, let alone started. Is that sweet? So he wrote all of this. Talks about thanking Kyle Quill, who was the headmaster at the time. Thank you for giving me all the hall passes, Tim Weber, who was a dear, dear friend who made magic happen for us. Gary Kerner. I mean, he just wrote. He was always grateful. And Andy Wildman, the head pastor of the church, he would sometimes, Carson would get confused, which I still am sometimes, why? I'm a 14-year-old boy. Why did I get cancer? He would ask. Sure. Andy Wallman gave Carson his cell phone number. I mean, that's a pretty big deal. The head pastor of a large church. And if Carson would call, Andy would say, clear my afternoon. I'm going to pick up Carson. He'd drive to school, pick Carson up at school, and spend the afternoon just listening. And Carson writes about he never had the slick answers. Andy's like, well, look at this scripture. It's never, ever that.
He's being the church.
Yeah.
He is the church.
Yeah. And, and he wept. He wept when he was there when Carson died. And, he was the real deal. So he's still a dear friend.
I want to make sure we highlight just how incredibly special and resilient he is, that the day of the negative prognosis, the promise is made. Mm-hmm. He's already processed that this is the beginning of the end, like you said, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the same day that you have this conversation with him, mm-hmm. the promise of the book. I think that's incredible.
June 4th. Yeah. I never thought about it like that.
Instead of the wallowing, all the
right.
the emotions that are deserved, right? He deserves to have those. He decides that in that moment, same day. That's unbelievable.
That he's like, I want to give a voice to the children who have cancer but unable to express themselves. I know. And that's just yeah. So
I got a ton of questions. I just kind of been letting the story play itself out because I didn't want to jump in or interrupt, but that is definitionally wise beyond your years. Mm-hmm. Is that just did y'all teach him that? Did he grow up? That's just how he was. What that is definitely special. Mm-hmm. But say more about it. How, why, or how, or any. I don't know. Just it's very interesting in how a kid becomes wise beyond their years like that.
Yeah, and he just had a strength of character. Just I can't say he was born with that because, we took him to church, mm-hmm. And we spent a lot of time praying as a family. And, he was raised at Covenant, from when his brother was in an explorer there. And so Carson was, I guess, 3 at the time. So he's been around people that, walk the real walk and, ask the tough questions and, are deep souled lovers of the Lord, and those are the people that we surrounded ourselves with. So, he saw that as a young boy, and I've seen a lot of those kids that have received that and it didn't stick.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm grateful that when, at the diagnosis, sure, he was confused, but he knew who to run to, and, so he just knew who to lean on because, and when you read his book, you'll understand that more and more. It's all the way through here.
Yeah.
And he wasn't afraid to even to put in here some questions that, maybe are not too couth. Is that the right word?
Yeah, sure.
And so, but he's, he was still a 14-year-old boy, 14, 15, 16, and died when he was 17. So, yeah. And I just want to throw in, he said, to my big brother, Craig, you are my rock. Whenever I felt down or lonely, you were always there to carry me. I will always look up to you and admire everything you do. You set the standard for me in sports, friendships, faith, and nearly every other part of my life. I can always count on you to protect me and to be sure my best interests are always considered. It's hard to regularly communicate how much I love and respect you. I hope someday to be able to carry you like you have carried me through my life. You're the greatest. I love you. And that's where he got on the front of the book, the front cover. We had just met Derek Jeter, which was Carson's Make-A-Wish. Make-A-Wish couldn't make it happen, and that's another long story. But that's his brother. I snapped that picture of him because he had this adrenaline. He had finally met the guy that he's always wanted to meet his whole dang life. And then he hit the wall because he was very sick at this time. And his brother said, hop on my back. I'll carry you back to the hotel. And so I just happened to snap this photo of him carrying Carson on his back. And so that, and he talks about why it is called Carry Me. About the cover. He says on here, one night in Florida when my brother Carson, Bub, he called him Bub. Yeah. One night in Florida when my brother couldn't take another step, he hopped on my back and I carried him back to the hotel. Carson never let cancer stop him from doing the things he loved to do. If there was ever a goal in his mind, be assured that he would accomplish it. Whether it was fighting the current of the Kenai River while fly fishing in Alaska or hiking through the thin air to the summit of a 14,000-foot mountain in Colorado, Carson made his dreams come true. There was never an ounce of surrender in his body. No matter how weak Carson got, he saw what he wanted to see and did what he wanted to do, even if it meant that I had to carry him back. So sweet. I know. Those brothers were extraordinary. So, I'm sorry. Am I going all over the place?
No. That told you that's what we did. Like, we're going to go everywhere. This moment right now to me is interesting because it's been a while since Carson passed.
Yeah.
And you guys have done in his name amazing things. I mean, we can come to some of that on the precipice of forever change, the things that took him down. And yet, even with all of that length of progress and passage of time, it still feels like that.
It does.
And that, man, every day or there's something, right? He's there always.
I mean, as a woman, he was in my womb, and I was telling somebody, a friend of mine another woman that I know, I've gotten to know, whose daughter died of the same disease. I sent her a text the other day because she was, it's just so sad, but, Ella spoke at a couple of my events, and one of my big events in DC, and she was teed up to speak at another event, and she died. And so I just happened to be in DC at the time and ended up having the honor of going to her funeral. And so anyhow, but I sent her a text, I think it was yesterday or the day before. I said, just to let her know that grief is it's a long journey, especially when it's your child, and I can say that with authority because I've walked those shoes. I'm not a counselor or anything by any means. And I told her, I said, I never knew anybody could feel so sad the day that, that I was holding his hand when he died. I never knew, because it was this energy, looking for a cure, taking him to treatment. And then when we knew he was not long for this world, it was, helping him capture the things he wanted to capture, before he took his last breath and stepped into paradise, the way I like to say it. But, I have a tendency to sugarcoat and make things look really good, but sometimes you can't do that all the time. It's because it's so sad. It is so sad for your little boy, for your child to die. And people have said, oh, my mother died. I'm like, I'm so sorry. My mother died too. My grandmother died, but there's no sadness like your child dying.
Oh, it's completely different. Yeah,
it is. And I've had a lot of deaths, and I told her, I said, I never knew anybody could feel so sad. So yeah, it's okay to feel that sad.
That
the
idea,
courage to do it.
Yeah. That idea of like, it's okay.
It's okay.
Like the way you feel is terrible and also normal.
Yeah.
Like it's okay. And I can tell you that it is a process, and that sort of like reaching out and I hate to say it again, but like normalizing that and just saying it's not you. It's what it is, what it is.
Yeah.
Man, there's a lot of great power in there. Let's use that as a pivot moment, right? Because from great sadness becomes great progress, right? There's no doubt that this book has touched tons of people, given people tons of perspective. There's the foundation, the work that it's doing, all of it, right? So take us on that journey, like from the bottom, from the depths of that day. Where does it go?
So I told you about June 4th of 2009. Then speed up to December, Christmas Eve of 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So things have digressed in his length of days. His days were numbered even more now. And we had an emergency visit to Children's because he was very sick. And they would not let us go home Christmas Eve. They always let the kids go. I mean, it's Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
They always let everybody go home. And, unless you're really the sickest of the sick. And we were the sickest of the sick. And so, once again, Dr. Bowers showed up, and he said, your days are numbered. And he goes, Carson said, I want to see it, and so he put the X-ray, the MRI up on the screen in his hospital room, and they have these MRIs with and without contrast. It was like it just lit up, figuratively like a Christmas tree. It was just, you could see it was all over the place. So Dr. Bowers is there, my brother's sister, everybody showed up. Andy Wildman came again, of course, to the hospital. And so, there was just a lot of friends and people, and they would drop everything, even Christmas Eve, and to come up there. Then, about 3:00 in the morning, my husband had gone home, other son had gone home, and it was just he and I, he was in his bed. I remember that corner room. They gave us the big corner room, I guess, because they knew a lot of people were going to be up there. And so, it was the corner room with a big, beautiful view of downtown, and it was high. And Carson was in his bed, and I was over here on the couch, and he whispered, thinking I was asleep. Of course, Mama wasn't asleep. He goes, Mama? I'm like, yeah. He goes, I thought I was going to make it. I'm like, I know, sugar. And then he goes, Mom, about 15 minutes later, he's just processing it. He goes, don't let them bury me. I'm like, honey, I won't let them bury you. I promise. And then about 15 minutes later, he goes, Mom, I'm like, yeah. He goes, make sure they study those tumors in my brain, because if those tumors can help some kid someday not die from cancer like I am, I'd like that. And then he whispered, it's hard to have cancer. So we knew, what are you going to do with that? like ship those tumors off, hoping somebody would do it. And we just knew, we had to be very methodical about our plan.
Yeah, right.
And so we got pretty much right to work. He died January 12th, 2010, and that was Christmas Eve. So it wasn't that like 9 or so days later. But we did send those tumors off. And you have to make arrangements for this kind of thing because you can't just do it last minute. Dr. Bowers was part of it, and we had to call him and wake him up in the middle of the night, and he, had to make sure that it was a process. But he wrote right after we shipped those tumors off, one of his the doctor that we purposed to send it to, within 24 hours, I got an email from him. I'm trying to find it in this book, and I wrote after that. We received the tumors this morning, and the tumor cells were in good shape. We have just completed the injection of the viable tumor cells in the brains of 10 mice. Hopefully, some of them will develop tumors over time, and we will then be able to use this precious model to study critical questions involved in tumor metastasis. I will let you know the progress of this model development effort. Please accept my sincere sympathy in your loss of Carson. He is such a brave young man. May God bless you and your family during this time and always. So that's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
It was just 24 hours after. And so I thought, you know what? We're going to do this. We're going to do this thing big. And this is just the beginning. That's confirmed what we knew we needed to do. And we've done it.
Yeah.
So
that night, he wanted that for the good, but he was injecting a purpose into your soul too. Like that immediately activated that next phase.
Yeah. And this is what I wrote. And I wrote a little part. It said, I said, when my sons were born, I remember thinking, I bet everyone here wishes their baby was more like my baby. I was instantly and fiercely in love.
Mm-hmm.
Most moms are that way. And I had hopes and dreams for my sons. I hoped they would sleep through the night in the beginning, share the toys, get the good teachers in kindergarten, pass their spelling test, remember their math homework, eat the fruit in their lunchbox, throw strikes, have a date to homecoming, all the regular stuff. And then one day, just like that, my hope changed. I hope and prayed Carson would get well and return to robust health. Now my hope has changed again. And I hope the tumors that invaded Carson's brilliant brain and claimed his life will help find a cure, and that all his pain and suffering was not in vain. Carson insisted his brain and the tumors that invaded his brilliant brain be donated to the study of medulloblastoma. We honored his request, and there's that. So, yeah.
And then you're off with a purpose and a journey and tell us where that. I mean, we're headed to today. We're headed to here, where you shared with us some information before we started recording about the process and the progress and the foundation and the growth and the engagement and involvement. I could use lots of adjectives here to keep going on and on and on, but it feels like what started that day is grown into something that's almost fixed, right?
Well, I don't know about fixed, but there's a long way to go. But it's interesting. Can I bring back a little bit more of the
you can do anything you want.
The construction industry, the way that I think I was telling you that. So we were just talking on the way in that several years ago. So I'll do this. So as we launched the foundation, we identified 3 pillars that we felt we wanted to be part of. And so the first pillar was the mental health of kids in the battle. So, Carson's Make-A-Wish was to meet Derek Jeter. Mm-hmm. Well, Make-A-Wish ended up not being able to make it happen. But we have somebody that made it happen. But when right after brain surgery, Carson was not opening his eyes. He wasn't drinking. He wasn't eating. He was shutting down. He goes, I'm not doing this. It's too hard. And he didn't say that, but he did it by his silence because that was out of character for him. Dr. Bowers once again said, we need to get him We need to get him moving. We need to get him up. We need to get him talking. We need to get him to open his eyes. He's got to have some water, swallowing, the whole thing after. So, I called his brother.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I said, he needs to see you. And, Craig, left school, went home and picked up Carson had, little boys love their idols, and he had a life-size cutout of Derek Jeter. And so Craig walked into that hospital room with that big cutout of Derek Jeter. He goes, brother, you're going to meet him someday. You need to get going. Let's do this thing. And he talked to him about, just what it would feel like to meet Derek Jeter and, why we should do this. And, and he did. And it was kind of a funny story that the nurses would tell me that they walk into the hospital room at night and like they would change his, do a little blood draw or take his blood temperature or his temperature or, heartbeat, whatever.
Yeah.
And they'd always walk in and think, oh gosh, there's a man in the room,
Get freaked out. Yeah.
Every time we walked in the room, that big cutout of Derek Jeter spooked them.
Yeah.
So anyhow, it's kind of still a little joke, but that, we knew the mental health of kids in the battle is important. The will to live of any cancer patient, but especially these children. So what we do is we focus on, we have a unique relationship with Jordan Spieth.
Mm-hmm.
And we've partnered with him and we give these Under Armour backpacks. Carson loved Under Armour before we knew that Jordan Spieth had that as his emblem as a little boy, like fourth grade, or all his stuff was Under Armour. And so anyhow, we started this program and then realized that Jordan's, why don't we partner with them? He's Mr. Under Armour dude. And so they sponsor our Under Armour backpack project for the teenagers. Nobody really does much for the teenagers. We found that. And so we fill the void.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, they would give him, here's some silly putty or, he's like, okay. But so we focus on the teenagers and we even built the teen room on the cancer floor, $100,000 donation. And it's called Carson's Corner at Children's. And so it's just for the teenagers. Just go in there and hang out. And we have the best gaming systems and the best game and, art supplies and whatever they want to do in there. And so we built Carson's Corner. And then also we do these Under Armour backpacks for the teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
We ship them, we give them all over to MD Anderson, Texas Children's, Medical City, UT San Antonio, Dell Children's, all around the Lone Star State. And then at COVID, we shipped them to the Philippines. We shipped one to the Philippines, one to Italy. We had either 12 or 13 in the stores just for what if we, just for in case, you save some things for just in case.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, this is just in case. And so we opened them up to this medulloblastoma Facebook page. If anybody wanted one, we'd send it to you. And so we ended up sending them, like I said, to Italy and the Philippines, and I can't remember where else, but it was pretty cool.
That's fun. Yeah.
And then a few ones all across the U.S. So we depleted our supply, but it was worth it.
Yeah, yeah.
So and then we used to we got all about the mental health of the children. We also do this program where early on we did a limousine. We contacted a limousine company who's a friend of ours, Premier Transportation, and he owns it. And he would bring a limousine to the hospital, and we would fill those limousines full of teenage cancer patients. Dr. Bowers would go on, and the nurses would go. My husband, we would go. Jerry Jones would have us up in their suite.
Oh, wow.
And then and Stephen invited us on the field during practice. And so, they would let us go through the buffet. These kids, some of them had never been to a Cowboy game, had never been in a suite for sure. And then, crab legs dripping with butter and the suite, they're like, what? So it was incredible it was incredible to give that gift to these kids.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, and then we go to the Ranger game, the Maverick game. Cuban would, roll the red carpet for us. And then we go to the Dallas Symphony.
Mm-hmm.
Then COVID happened, and so now we had to pivot. Children's called us and said, can you, the kids are going into lockdown. They were tethered to their chemo bags and sequestered to their room.
Yeah.
And their siblings couldn't come see them.
Mm.
And only one parent at a time could go up there and see them. I mean, we were like, what do you need? And so we when they called, they know they can depend on us. We brought 14 those switches.
Yeah.
And then we brought new Xbox, whatever number it was, I don't know, whatever they wanted, and all the hot games. We just yes, we're there. Then they called, I don't know, about a year later, they're like, okay, they're still sequestered to their rooms. I'm like, okay. And so we launched a program called Hearts of Gold Hootenannies. Hootenanny, is a party, Texas party, raise the roof. And then gold is the color of childhood cancer, like pink is for breast cancer.
Okay.
So we just Hearts of Gold Hootenanny, I don't know, pulled it out of the air one day. And so we act like the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus every single day. Every single month. Because most of every single year, and we all year long, every single month, all year long, and we give a hootenanny surprise. This is the same thing for each kid on the hospital floor. So let's say we got Mrs. Fletcher involved for the State Fair of Texas. We delivered the State Fair of Texas, and we have these boxes, and every kid gets a bobblehead, a cowboy hat, a bandana at the same time, and the nurse, they deliver them all the way. Then we'll do let's say we do Nerf guns. We give them to the doctors, to the nurses, to the kids, and they have this big mayhem one big crazy day.
Sounds like my office.
I know.
I was like, how do I want to get invited to that?
I know.
Amazing.
Well, maybe you can go up there one time with us. And then we have remote control cars all charged up, ready to go at the drop. Everybody gets a car. And it's kind of they don't realize it. The kids don't realize it. It's physical therapy. They have to get out of the bed and walk around. But we do it, and that they say it's their very favorite day of the month.
Heck yeah.
So, some kids, people don't think about these kids in February or in, July, and we're the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus every single month.
Dealers of hope and joy.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
Dealers of hope and joy.
Yeah.
We call it handing out smiles, and that every single message on our Hootenanny card is "You are loved."
Mm-hmm.
And then we've engaged a couple of schools, the Covenant School Dallas and Ursuline Academy. And they decorate our little cards that say, "You are loved," and they put their fingerprints on them, and they turn each fingerprint into a little happy critter. So it's real personalized. So that's what we do for the mental health. And then to bring it back to advocacy and awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I told you about serving on the $6 billion cancer prevention. Did I tell you about that?
Yeah, we talked before we started recording. We talked about it a little. Yeah.
Oh, do you want me to tell you?
Yeah, say it again.
So in 2007, Governor Perry launched a program called the Cancer Prevention and Research Institute of Texas. It was $3 billion then. And now it has grown. In 2019, there was a reauthorization of another $3 billion, and it passed. We made sure it passed. We worked very hard to make sure it passed. I went and talked to state level congressional members, and I'm like, what we have started can't just all of a sudden stop, And so, anyhow, during my service, so the acronym of this organization is CPRIT, C-P-R-I-T, and everybody knows it by CPRIT. Anybody that's in the cancer world knows it by CPRIT. And so it's the second largest funder of cancer research outside the federal government. Texas is. Isn't that such a Texas thing?
Oh,
We're we got this.
Second behind the federal government?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a pretty Texas thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and we have this ecosystem here. We have, Texas Children's, MD Anderson, UT Southwestern.
For sure.
UT San Antonio, Dell Children's, Children's. We have, Lubbock. Well, I mean, it's this ecosystem that we there was this brainchild. They were like, we're going to do this. So they did it, and it's been wildly successful. So I was invited, and who knows why they invited me, because right after Carson died, they called me and invited me to serve on CPRIT's Childhood Cancer Advisory Council. It's called the Advisory Council for Childhood Cancer. So I'm like, okay. And I was the only mom. There was a dad and a mom, and then like the director of pediatrics at MD Anderson, the director of pediatrics at all these big giant guys. And I thought, you know what? I belong here, you know? And during my service, they have made, CPRIT has made childhood cancer a priority. And they named their conference room the Carson Leslie Conference Room in Austin, Texas, in their headquarters, to say, okay, we hear you. And this is what they said. Let's see here. They've raised it. They've moved it from, it was barely 3% in 2010 of investments in childhood cancer. Now it's a standard 12%, 11 to 12% focused on childhood cancer. So, it's amazing what has been accomplished because of CPRIT making childhood cancer a priority. And one of the things they do is they identify luminaries in different cancers from all over the world and recruit them to move their lab from wherever they are to Texas to set up shop. And they're significant investments in these, you know, it has to be they have to have an institution that wants them. They have to want to come, and the package has to be right. So it's a process. Well, they just recruited the #1 luminary in medulloblastoma to move his lab from Canada to Texas. Mm-hmm. And he did land in at Texas Children's. And he not only just showed up, he has a plan and a team in place for the early detection to prevent the disease from growing from a little polyp into a full-blown disease, how they found it in Carson, and get rid of it before it grows to be something nasty and angry and maims the children. Mm-hmm. And he's like, rather than having to treat the children and curing them, why not stop it early on? And he published a paper with a team of others. He's a big team player. He published a paper that medullo originates in utero. And he's like, why don't we go and remove those little polyps before, because the baby's brain is pliable then at that before. And so they're able to, it hasn't been done yet, but he has a plan and he has a team in place. They're like, yeah, that makes sense. And he's like the quarterback, and we're hoping to really be a leader of the booster club to make this thing happen. So, and there's a lot of other people. I've already talked to a lot of people. His moving van hasn't even arrived here in in Texas yet. So I'm like, hey. So he's like, settle down. We'll be there.
Cheerleaders are here. Come on.
I know.
Right?
Yeah, I know. Right. The cheerleaders. And our board has met with him. And I have a very high level board. You've heard of PricewaterhouseCoopers. Mm-hmm. Their global oncology partner, he's retired now from there, found me. And he's like, who is this crazy girl down in Texas that is the conference room and, is part of CPRIT? Like, who does that? And then another thing that we do as far as advocacy and awareness is in Washington, D.C. So a few months after, no, not even a few months. Let me think when it was. Carson died January. Yeah, a few months after Carson died, Congressman Michael McCall, he went to school at St. Mark's here in Dallas. And he lost his best friend to cancer when they were both in the 4th grade. Mm-hmm. And he carried that pain of the death of his friend. It was very formidable for him from the 4th grade all the way until he became an elected official. And he was determined to launch the Congressional Childhood Cancer Caucus. We have a mutual friend now. And so our mutual friend, the Coffees, they arranged for me to give Mrs. McCall, Linda McCall, a copy of Carson's book. So this was like right after Carson died.
Mm-hmm.
And Congressman McCall received it, read it, called me, and invited me to fly to D.C. and speak at the Congressional Childhood Cancer Caucus, at the inaugural Congressional Childhood Cancer Caucus when he was launching it in his Washington, D.C. home. I'm like, okay, kind of like the secret thing. I'm like, okay. And so, and I gave everybody, his room was packed with dignitaries, with congressional members, senators, leaders like in the different various childhood cancer organizations. And there were five ragtag moms and dads that were there. Were like, who had lost a child to cancer.
The most important people in the room.
Yeah,
right.
And so I shared Carson's story and gave them all a book. And since then, we have gotten 6 laws through the House, through the Senate, signed by 2 very different presidents, Obama and then Trump, that benefit the overall state of childhood cancer. And so we're incentivizing pharmaceuticals. It's called the Creating Hope Act, the STAR Act, all these different acts. And we've been very successful. And so we have an event every year. I thought, you know what? Think about can you think of anything that is bipartisan?
No.
Childhood cancer is like bipartisan at the core.
It better be.
Yeah. And there are, and we don't care what you wear, what you do, what you say, what you speak, but we have figured out how to break down the walls. And so, and we've been one of the most successful caucuses McCall has. So he's the leader. And I thought, you know what, we got to celebrate these fellas, these gals, and their bipartisan effort. So we launched an event called the Golden Toast. Like I said, gold is the color of childhood cancer, like pink is for breast. So I was having it at all these random places, and I'm like, okay. And I did have it twice at the Library of Congress, which was pretty cool.
It's pretty awesome. Sure. That's a pretty smooth place.
Yeah. And then I thought, because Carson's book was in there, I'm like, that's kind of, Then I thought, you know what? I'd love to have it overlooking the White House. So I was thinking all these different places, and they were quoting me these gigantic numbers. I'm like, are you out of your mind? Is there any place that you can think of? And they're like, well, there is a place called La Una. I'm like, where is that? And they told me where it was, and they said it's really the best view of the White House, and it's just straight on, and but you have to know somebody in the construction industry. I'm like, okay, now let's look it up. And so I called my husband, and I'm like, Craig, so La Una, it's called Laborers International, and I said, do you know of anybody that hires people from the La Una International? And, he goes, well, yeah, Beck is they hire more laborers from La Una than anybody else in the construction industry. I'm like, you've got to be kidding. I mean, God does these things at every turn,
Yeah.
Like,
I would have never guessed that too, because that sounds union.
Well, it is union, but they hire these union laborers whenever they need them. It's unbelievable. Yeah. So I called the president's office at La Una. Tanya, she's awesome. She loves me. And I'm like, okay, listen, this is, and she vetted it and figured it all out. And they're like, you're in. And so we've had the Golden Toast on it's on 16th Avenue. There's the White House. Here's La Una, and it's on the 9th floor, overlooking the White House. Outside venue, they provide, everything I need. They cut whatever I need. Move the table here. Nope, move it here. Nope, put something over there. Whatever I need. Then we have a fellow mom who lost their son to cancer, who owns these restaurants in D.C., and they donate all the food. And so all we have to do is provide the bar. And then we've had sponsors, because everybody wants a Coke or a glass of wine or a drink to toast our accomplishments. And so it's a really highly anticipated bipartisan event that brings the children together. Mm-hmm. The moms and dads who lost a child, the survivors, the siblings, but the person who's the VIP of the night is always a child
Mm-hmm.
and a survivor. And I've always had a not always, but the last 5 years I've had a medulloblastoma survivor because I can.
Yeah.
So, and then of course the congressional members speak because, that's kind of what they do.
Yeah. I need my 2 minutes.
I know. And Congressman Michael McCall is an extraordinary, deep-souled man who loves the Lord.
Yeah.
And so he does it for the children. His heart is in the right place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So, but there's another drawback to the construction industry that only God can orchestrate my steps.
Yeah.
It just never ceases to surprise me anymore. So, and recently, so part of what we do with Secret is we decided to lean our board. Jerry, I told you, my PricewaterhouseCoopers guy, he said, let's talk to Secret and see, because everybody, he's like enamored by this whole Secret thing, I'm like, come on, I'll introduce you to all my people there. And so we made an appointment and we sat in the Carson Leslie conference room and we said, what else can we do? What else can you do for childhood cancer? And so and they said, you know what? Gather the childhood cancer investigators all across all across Texas, and let's bring them together and have. So we launched this thing called Researchers Roundup, and we bring them all together, and they talk about what they can do together, and then CPRIT takes that intellectual property that they bring back to CPRIT, and then they will design a RFA, request for awards, of what these investigators say, hey, we need this. This would help this project go, and I can't do it all in my lab. So to make them work together.
Yep.
And so Lyda Hill, we just hosted it several months ago at her offices here at the water cooler. Mm-hmm. So did I tell you this already?
No. You were telling us about the water cooler.
So Lyda Hunt Hill, she's a major philanthropist here in the city of Dallas, and she had this. She put out this opportunity for nonprofits to apply. Because we were working out of my house, then we were working at another shop, but we were at this point where we couldn't keep doing this anymore. And so, she was offering office space in a group called Water Cooler for specific, she identified 15 nonprofits, mm-hmm. and it was a very competitive process that, we had to write, and it was a long process, and we were chosen.
Yeah.
We were chosen.
So now you got free digs.
No, almost free. We have to pay a little bit, but it's almost free.
Yeah.
And they give us so much stuff. Uh-huh. They hired an IT guy and they gave us all new computers, and they give us a lot. They believe in our mission. And so we hosted our researchers roundup there at the digs there, and UT Southwestern's our anchor. And so we run into each other, in the hallway and down in the water cooler and, in the cafeteria, and it's right up here called Pegasus Park.
Okay.
Right down the street from you guys.
Sweet. So
it's an honor.
And we have an event coming up in a couple weeks too.
Oh yeah.
The DPR Hoot Hollar.
The DPR famous. Is it famous or infamous? I don't know.
No, definitely famous.
It's a collision of both, I think. But it's an honor to be the recipient of DPR's Hoot Hollar. And I'll tell you how it really came together is the leads of DPR, they have come from different construction companies, Balfour Beatty. I mean, there's a lot of people that have come together.
Yeah. And
two families lost a child to medulloblastoma.
Within DPR?
They were at Balfour Beatty, but they've come over to DPR. So they're like, wait a minute. And so we sat down with them, and they came to us, and we talked at length. And it's a very emotional situation for for anybody, but to see your employees just struggle, that knowing their kid. I mean, you can't help but be changed by it. I mean, some are pretty callous, but it's pretty remarkable. The construction industry has fully embraced what we have done, what we are doing, and we get the subcontractors that are supportive. Beck always does this big giant bow shoot for us as well. But DPR's Hoot and Holler this year is coming up. It's February 16th at Gillies. And I'm telling you, it is a good time. There's no auction. There's no anything. There's just coming in and dancing and singing and having a big time. It started off with like 300 people, then it moved to like 900 people, then it was 1,200 people, and now it's like 2,000 people, and it's a party.
And last year was a pretty big name too, right?
Oh, you have no idea. It was a party of a lifetime. Aaron Watson silenced the room.
I bet.
I mean, for a while, and then it got rowdier and rowdier and rowdier. It was unbelievable. Yeah, he's my fave. I love
over and over, because when somebody with a similar journey to you always talks about how the construction industry shows up. And they show up, they support, they're at events, they sponsor. And there's countless people that are listening to this that are going to that Hoot and Holler. And you might be going to sponsor for DPR because you're a sub chasing them, or a vendor rep, or whatever the case may be. But just know what it's going to. Like that, I think this makes it very real of like, yeah, we're going to support something that really matters and is moving the needle in the kingdom. It's moving the needle for cancer research. Like, it's a really big deal. And it does that for me. Like, this story really punches me in the stomach of like, this is why that event exists. And this is why DPR is celebrating. This is why DPR's calling subcontractors for money.
Right.
Like, it matters. So if you're looking for somewhere to go and making an impact simultaneously, check this thing out.
Is it too late? Are tickets still on sale? I have no idea. That might be a loaded question.
It's still available.
Yeah, so check that out.
Yeah, I think some of the sponsorships are closed, but you can always get a ticket. And I think there's a few sponsorships available. Yeah, it's unbelievable. There's a quote that I love. It's like, we're, like from the bipartisan effort, and then to the construction industry, like Beck, DPR, and even Austin Commercial, and all the subs. Like, there's different subs that are, like painters, and they all come together for this cause. And there's this quote by G.K. Chesterton that I love. It says, "We are all in the same boat in a stormy sea, and we owe each other a terrible loyalty." Because, there's just, when it comes down to it, none of the peripheral really matters, And when you talk about a child, it's a child.
Oh, yeah.
They don't smoke. They don't drink. They're not carousing. Carson was 14.
Mm-hmm.
And, and to see a child suffer and slowly die from cancer, it rips your heart out.
Oh, for sure.
And so I'm so grateful for the construction industry that has just fully embraced, our efforts. Yeah. And we're doing great stuff.
Let me give a couple plugs here, and then we'll kind of pivot back to our kind of stepping out here for a minute. But who's the DPR? Is there a DPR contact? Like, if you're listening and you're like, I want in on that, who would we reach out to? A DPR?
There should be, if you look it up right now, you should be able to find its own standalone website for registration, tickets, all that sort of stuff.
I'm acting like Joe Rogan right now. So dprhootandholler.com.
Yeah, that's where you go.
And then
it's bigger than a person for sure.
Got it. So you can go on there, get tickets. All the information's on that website. We just looked it up. We're super fancy right now. Yeah.
We are fancy.
So
me included.
Yeah, all of us just collectively
fancy
and totally fancy.
We're fancied up.
So this is DPR's 7th Hoot and Holler benefit concert. That's available at hootandholler.com. And then connecting with you directly, like, how do we get in touch with, if people out there like, I want to know more, I want to get involved, I want to get looped in. I'm Google it, sure, but how we do that? So
it's Carson, Carson, Carson Leslie, just like the girl's name, Leslie, carsonlesliefoundation.org. And if you want to email me or email our team, it's hello at carsonlesliefoundation.org.
There you go.
So, yeah, you can find us pretty easily. We're all over the place.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kev. What are you saying?
The book. Like we usually
I
ask about books,
know.
but this is the book for
This
this
is the book,
episode.
yeah, like
Carry Me. I was tearing up just looking at some of it as you were talking, reading some of it. Like it's just incredibly impactful. This is the book you should get because I guarantee you it goes to a good cause as well when you purchase it.
Yeah.
Well, and if you're looking for a good cry,
Yeah.
you won't make it off the back page because I barely did reading a sin a second ago. It's like, man, I'm looking forward to. I don't read. Kevin knows this.
This is true.
But it's a joke. It's a podcast joke. Like we always talk about books. And
No, he actually can't read.
and then
so he's going to learn how to read
I'm
with
illiterate.
this book.
I'm actually, boy, that'd be a long con on everybody.
Yeah.
I can't actually read.
Yeah.
The lawyer that can't read, it'll go
Yeah.
bestsellers list.
But a 14-year-old boy wrote this, so I think you can read this
I
one.
can
Heck,
muscle
yeah.
through it.
You
yeah.
can muscle through this one.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to it.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
looking
pretty. I want to hear from you after you get through it, or if you get into it. It's
After I read it,
Yeah.
I will swing by the water cooler to pick up my swag.
good.
How about that?
That's
good.
a deal.
How
Full
about
circle
that?
moment
Full
right
circle
there.
moment right
Full
there. Like I love
circle.
swag. The water cooler's cool. Big things going on. DPR book. Put it all together. Pack it.
Check it off.
Yeah, check it out.
Yeah,
All
good.
right, so we normally go 2 things on the way out, right? Tell us awesome book you've read, but we're leaving this one here,
Okay.
and then kind of we close out with you got something else. You got another book?
No, you
Give it
had
to
you had asked me earlier what books I like.
Yeah. Okay, go there then. We'll take it.
There's just 3 books
Okay.
and 1 philosopher.
Go.
So of course the Bible,
Mhm.
the Bible number 1, and there's this book that really carried me through. Besides carrying me, it's Soul Keeping by John Ortberg.
Okay.
I read it. You should see mine. It's all written in. And then Dallas Willard, who is a brilliant philosopher. He's not with us anymore. He's stepped into paradise. Hopefully Carson's met him by now. And he said, God has given us 2 books, the Bible and the Book of Nature. And really stepping outside, sometimes I really, it fills my soul up
Mm-hmm.
to go outside and see the sunsets and the ladybugs and the moon rising and the ocean coming in. And that is one thing too that really, the beauty that surrounds us every day, if we just slow down enough to breathe it in, it's good for your soul.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
That is good stuff. Yeah. All right. So we normally leave like the exit our podcast with like a one big thing, like of all of this story and life's journeys and adventures and people you've met and all of it along the way. Like, what's a big takeaway for you? Like, what's the one big thing?
I tell my girlfriends, I said, there's this, I remember at church one time, and it was the shortest sermon I've ever heard. And I tell my pastor this too, that I will never forget what he said. I've written it down, and he said, always remember this, people. He goes, life is hard. God is good, and the glory is coming.
Mm.
And that's what has really, I think I was probably 23 years old at that time before I got married. And I'll never forget that, because that's true. That's truth right there. Life is hard. I've lived a lot of hard life. God is good. I know that. And I've known that as a little girl, but I really know that. I always know who to run to. And the glory is coming. And that's what gives my soul rest, even though I can still cry, because Carson's worthy of crying over that he took his last breath January 12th, 2010, and stepped into paradise.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not it. This is not all there is.
Yeah.
So, as Queen Elizabeth said famously not that long ago, we're just passing through.
We are. Yeah. Well, you want a little nugget for your pocket to take away. There's a good one.
Oh, yeah. I'll be using it as a daily motivation for sure.
Coming soon to your inbox near you. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Annette, thank you.
Thank you.
For like just trusting us with your story.
Yeah.
And sharing with us, and hopefully helping those folks out there, listeners, help move their mountains and move mountains for you guys too. Thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah. My earrings are telling me I got to take these things off.